Hopefully this works. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I see the light, so I know it works. All right. I should do a backup of this. Welcome to TPIMSRLIVE, folks. I'm your host, True Powers Mind. Today's date, June 23rd, 2020, the year of our Lord. Today, I want to thank the Most High for allowing me yet another opportunity to sit in the chair of power and deliver another hour of power and information to the people. Also, if you guys can, please go to Cash App, help out Dr. Randy Short. That's capital D, lowercase r, capital HANDY, all lowercase, capital SHORT. Dr. Randy Short at Cash App. Please help the brother. He's doing great work. And we are at the tipping point, y'all. That's why I wanted to give you all a kind of history of where we're at. Let's check this out. And thank you for the confidential informant.
Now, a look at the history of poor white Americans. That's the focus of the latest edition of the NewsHour Bookshelf. Here's Jeffrey Brown.
This book tells many stories. Arguably, the most important is the one we as a people have trouble embracing, the pervasiveness of a class hierarchy in the United States.
And why is that? Because have we all drunk in the Kool-Aid talking about upward mobility? You can tie up your bootstraps, Billy, and make something of yourself? Or is it because we don't want to truly embrace the cruel, calculative reality of the economic system and paradigm in this country, which is the foundation of this nation? See, when we talk about poor black folks, that's no big deal. That's almost to be expected. You can't have America without poor black. That's traditionally ingrained, and that is what reparations and liberation's all about. It's bringing forth freedom for all. Let's continue. Oh, I'm in a mood today, y'all.
That line comes from a new book with the provocative title, White Trash, which makes a provocative argument that from the nation's earliest history to now, ideals such as opportunity and upward mobility have not characterized the lives of many Americans. Author Nancy Eisenberg is a professor of history at Louisiana State University.
Now, with a name like Eisenberg, I bet you my bottom dollar, Brother David, peace and power, welcome to the show, by the way. We're dealing with a small sombrero, probably a feministic small sombrero at that. And this is where we're at. This is the leadership, y'all. This is the banking strings. This is the law behind the written law. How many Berg, Stein, Steens, Sling, Slimmer, Slimer, Slang, Sheen, Slongs do we have in power? As far as senators, as far as council members on county, citywide. But no one wants to talk about these issues. No one wants to talk about their cause and purpose and keeping us ignorant, keeping us superstitious, and keeping us oppressed. Collectively. This is all of us now. But let's get back to the show.
University, and welcome to you.
Well, thanks for having me.
I think what hit me most is the idea that the poor have not only been accepted, but expected, that it's a part of our national DNA. That's the argument you're making?
Well, I think one of the things we forget is that for half of our history, we were an agrarian nation. So white trash really comes out of notions of rural poverty. And it goes all the way back to British ideas, because in the colonial period and well into throughout the 19th century, the mark of being a successful America was being a property owner. And what we've forgotten is that large numbers of Americans did not own property. For example, in Thomas Jefferson's Virginia, at the time of the Revolution, 40% of white men were landless.
So when you refer to white trash, I just want to be clear, and the idea of white trash, literally the term was used, the terms like waste. Who do you mean?
Yes, the word white trash, at least as far as we've been able to discover, was first appeared in newspaper print in the 1820s. But it has a much older meaning because if we go back to some of the leading promoters of British colonization, when they imagined what were they going to do with the New World, the New World, first of all, was imagined as a wilderness, what they called a wasteland. And it was the perfect place for literally dumping the idle poor. And these were referred to as waste people.
So those are the beginnings. But your argument is that that has pervaded up to our own time, that we have the national myth of opportunity and social mobility.
Who's this guy trying to jive? Himself or us? The myth? What, Jim Crow wasn't a reality? Redlining did not occur? There's been class system. See, this is why I like these type of conversations, because we can sit here and pick this shit apart and see where they're coming from. Oh boy, here is obviously a non-believer. I don't know, his backstory, but the chick has it right. This was a dumping ground for the dreary, the useless eaters of Europe, the sexually deprived, the criminal-minded, the lawless. They were all dumped into the so-called New World. This is the roots of the nation. So when you see the ugly fruit it produced, now you understand the seed that germinated this bitch. Let's continue.
Are you saying that those don't exist for everyone, or that they don't exist
Welcome,
for
Tate. Peace and
one
power.
subset of people?
No, I think there is clearly, you can find examples of people who have been able to rise up and improve themselves. The problem is that we exaggerate the idea that at the time of the revolution, we abandoned the class system. We created an exceptional society where we celebrated upward mobility. But in fact, what the founders like Franklin and Jefferson really believed in is similar to what the British had in mind, that the poor would be allowed to move into the frontier, or what was known as the Southern backcountry and the Old Northwest. And what they were really promising was horizontal mobility, not upward mobility.
And land then, as you say, was the key factor, not education, not energy or anything. But what about now?
I would say that land is still extremely important. Class has a geography. If we think about the way most Americans live, and the other measure of class that I highlight is home ownership. If you're poor, the same way they had different names for the poor, they had different names for what they live in, a shack, a shebang, or if we talk about trailer trash. What we live in today, we live in class zone neighborhoods. We have taken into account the importance of racial segregation, and we know that history, but we also live in neighborhoods that are divided by class. And if you live in a better neighborhood, you have more amenities, you have better infrastructure, better schools. And so geography still plays a very important part. And owning a house is a very important measure of being a member of the middle class.
I know you wrote the book before we got into the politics of the current campaign, but how do you see class driving our politics today?
I don't see Donald Trump and the issues brought up by Bernie Sanders as that surprising, because at crucial moments when politicians are involved, they do use class language. They do heighten and emphasize class distinctions.
And why is that so important, kiddos? It's because the higher the class, the more economic viability you should be. So therefore, you can pool your money with like-minded individuals and get a couple of things done. Whereas if you're in the poor or disenfranchised classes, you have no avenue to pull your money. And those amongst you who have the money are too leery to let you know they have money in fear of you taking their money. That's why there's no unity at the bottom, for real. That's why you have sons and daughters striving to be pimps and prostitutes or buck dancers or shuck drivers and whatever, instead of finding a way to build a true foundation. Like right now, if you're 18, 19 years old, what you need to do is go and get your little CDL Class A license, get a few endorsements, hazmats, doubles, triples, and go out there and make you some money and buy yourself some land and teach others the same method. If you're more intellectually astute, I suggest you go into some sort of research group that's doing viable research that is going to have some bang for the buck at the end of the rainbow. But even that, yeah, honestly, I'm going to tell you, once the trash unites and they realize, hey, we had it pretty good, the exterminations will begin. And all you who are basically economically viable will be stripped and placed nude in the streets. These are metaphors. Don't take this literal. And you'll be made shame before you're exterminated. Only because you refuse to unite. You refuse to support each other. You refuse to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You refuse to understand your origins. Not in the old, not in grandmother, but in Mother America. You refuse to heed the warning of the show. For that, we should almost weep. But what good is it to weep for willful fools? Let's continue.
That gets pulled. We get pulled in two directions there too, because sometimes politicians like to say we're all in the middle class, or we all have ambition to be in the middle class, or we're all capable of being the middle class. That's when they want to sort of draw from the more positive script. But at other times, I talk about key politicians who used class as a way to mobilize political divisions or to accentuate political divisions in our country.
And let me ask you briefly, if you could, does anything in all that you've studied through history give you any hope that that we could lessen these kinds of class divisions in the country?
Our history forces.
Before she goes into whatever nonsense she's about ready to say, there's only one way to mitigate this threat. The threat of, I guess, the lower classes rising up and taking what they feel is theirs. And that is to eliminate the lower classes. Using war, using famine, using genocide. Those forces, those biological forces, which is human active bodies with consciousness in it, is a threat. It's a threat to the society. 617, welcome to the show, Peace and Power. And this is what I'm trying to warn you all about. This is what I've been trying to warn you all about. Hopefully now you're starting to see this particular warning and the implications for it, what it means for you and yours. You're a human, damn it. You're deserving of life, and you're deserving of fulfilling your destiny and your fate. I pray that destiny and fate are not what these people are talking about the future. Because their ideal is for many of us to be gone off this planet. Their ideal is for just a remnant of humanity to remain in servitude and perpetuity to the elite class. All the research, all the development is to that end goal. Look at the technology around you and realize now you silly fools believe it's here to entertain, maybe enhance your life, economic opportunities or whatnot. But in the end, it is going to be your chains that you must break in order to be free. Oh, it's going to be a glorious world, Brother Shannon. Oh, they're going to be bucking and shucking and oh, lordy, lordy. But when the order's given, and the useless eaters are rounded up. You have no one to blame but each other. You have look to the left and look to the right. That's the person you have to blame because you refuse. You refuse to come together for common cause and purpose. And that's liberation and reparations, reconciliation, and building a new nation. Nope, that's too difficult. Nope, let's just stick with this plan. We're all going to our doom, brother DJ. We're all going to our doom. Let's continue.
This is to confront things that at times we don't want to deal with. We would prefer to have the myth. But I actually think it's healthy if we can get to the point where we can talk about class, not just use it as a slogan, not just use it as political rhetoric, but to actually to think about it more deeply and to think about how it affects who we are. And I often like to refer to the musical My Fair Lady. We judge people by the way they're dressed, by the way they talk, by the unwritten codes of class behavior.
All right, the book is White Trash, The 400-Year Untold History of Class in America. Nancy Eisenberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta pull this up so you guys should see this guy's face right here. Now you look at her and you can tell she comes from humble means, okay?
Who we are. And I often
Now look at this snarl. I know the detail's not coming across my video, but you can see the snarl on this guy's face like, why the fuck did my producer have this chick up here on my show today? That's why there was no, let's say, chemistry between the interviewer and the subject. I would surmise that old boy here has some trash in his history and he wants to delete it. Now, hold on. Because I know a lot of people, they don't want to talk about this issue because it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to talk about the poor.
Well, thank you very much for that warm welcome. And I also really want to extend my appreciation to the history department for inviting me here. This is a wonderful place to give a lecture. As you can tell from the title, I'm not going to be able to tell you everything that's in my book. It covers a lot. So what I'm going to try to do tonight is give you a series of snapshots, what I see as important threads and themes for understanding
Now, do you understand who's really doing the looting and rioting? Seriously, now do you understand? And here's another topic Spirit's talking to me. All those melanated children caught up in the foster care game. So you're trying to say the descendants of European, basically lower echelon, useless eater crowd, the criminals, the pedophiles, the freaks, the twisted, are good parental role models for young melanated men and women, children even. And when you start talking to a lot of these Greek types that kind of came up in that environment, you understand why there's so much homosex. You understand why there's so much perversion, because it started at the home that they were placed in by the system that doesn't love you to begin with. Grandma and grandpa were economically unviable. That was inherited by the mother and father. And then in the 70s and 80s and 90s, the child protective people come in and break down the family after the erosion between the man and woman dynamic happened during the welfare, I guess, awakening. Now, I could have said that shit all funny and, yeah, it's a joke. But I wanted to say it dry, emotionless, cruel. Just a matter of fact. so those who hear this broadcast and playback will understand the necessity of liberation today. And if you hear this for the first time, say 8, 9, 12 months from now, it's a wrap anyhow. You guys all heard about the soldier, right? Giving the information to the neo-Nazis about troop deployment, the amount of troops overseas. The die has been cast, yeah. And unfortunately, you of all have been sold out. They crapped out when they rode, and they sold out. And for all you flag wavers and this is my country, you better understand, if you don't own land, this ain't none of your country, boy. Now you get back out there and pick some cotton, and we might hook you up with a shanty. But until you become a landowner, until you have a piece of ground that you can put a tent in, you can sit there and watch the grass grow, or whatever you think you need to do. This country is not yours. Never has, never will be. Let's continue.
Concept that all of us know, people still use, but we often don't know where it really comes from and why it's so prevalent. And the big point that I want to point out is that we have to understand that in America, we do have a class system. We've always had a class system, and we often don't connect it to British understandings of rural society. And that's actually where white trash comes from.
You know, can we get a round of applause for Britain? You know, for 600 years, exploiting classism and hatred, racism, misogyny. No wonder you and the Indians were so easy to get along with, because you guys understand. You understand the classes. Mahatma Gandhi, that scumbag, pissed off because he couldn't go down there and shoot men and women during the Boer War down in South Africa. Well, he's a Prince of Peace. Let's give it up. Let's give it up. Of course, he's a Prince of Peace. For the people giving out the damn Peace Prize are eugenicists. What? Think about it. The people who give out the damn Peace Prize, there's no melanated people sitting on that damn council. Not back in the day of Gandhi. Let's keep it all in context. You got to understand, this thing we're against, and you should be against it because it's most certainly against you, it's this ideal of governance by divine proxy. No written laws that we all can agree on say, hey, this is the correct way to live. Let's swear to it and let's live by this. Let's take this oath on this. Nope. No, we're going to give it to old boy because he came out of the right with JJ. Kenneth, welcome to the show. The right ball squirted in there. And then that's why you have these freaks and twisted Emperor Caligula types. This twisted as all can be. But no one dare call them out on it under pain of death. That's the society you're going back to. So when you're sitting there in your Facebook Orwellian hell in the future, you're on your Instagram from FEMA Center 459 trying to play a prank in the mess hall, not realizing your fool ass is going to be burnt and consumed. You ever think why there's no graveyards in Germany that has thousands or millions of Jewish men and women's bodies that was, buried? At least a few mass graves, because they burnt up the evidence. The Jews that were burnt in Germany rained down on Russia in rain. Oh, and isn't that kind of funny when you understand the true history of Russia? and the small sombrero connection, it's almost irony. If they was to hold their mouth open, they would actually be drinking in their cousins. But anyhow, let's get back to the show. Welcome to the show, Brown. Peace and power.
I'd like to begin tonight with a film that we all know, To Kill a Mockingbird. The plot centers on a moralistic lawyer, Atticus Finch, who refuses to perpetuate the racial double standard. He agrees to defend an African-American, Tom Robinson, on the charge of raping a poor white girl, Mayella Ewell. The court finds Robinson guilty, but everyone knows he is innocent. An honorable, hardworking family man, Robinson stands well above the degraded Ewells, his poor white accusers. The shabbily attired Mayella is cowed by her bully of a father, a scrawny man in overalls, devoid of either merit or morality. He's Bob Ewell. His full name is Robert E. Lee Ewell. And as you can guess, he's not an heir of one of the aristocratic families of the Old South. As Harper Lee describes them in the novel of which the classic film was based, the Ewells were members of the terminally poor, those whose status could not be altered, up or down, by any economic shift, not even the Depression, in which the story is set. The Ewells lived behind the town dump, which they combed through regularly. They had congenital defects and hookworm. Their shack looked like, and this is how Harper Lee described it, a playhouse of an insane child. No one knew how many children lived there. Some thought 9, others 6. To the town of Macomb, Alabama, the Ewell children were simply dirty-faced ones at the window when anyone passed. Southerners and others too called such people white trash. The Ewells are not bit players in our country's history, and their history opens in the 1500s, not the 1900s. It starts with British colonial policies dedicated to resettling the poor, decisions that left a permanent imprint on America and on the structure of classes. First known as waste people and later white trash, marginalized Americans were stigmatized for their inability to be productive, their failure to own property, their unhealthy children, their lack of any sense of uplift on which the American dream is predicated. It's contrary to the national credo, but the truth is that Americans are quite comfortable rationalizing economic inequality.
Mr. Cooper, thank you. Peace and power. I'm glad you watched it. Did you hear what the lady's saying? Isn't that all the attributes to the thugs or the welfare queen? Sickly children, filthy homes, degenerate hygiene. You see, we can take these undesirable aspects and trait and place them on anyone except for who? The elites. You never say, oh, Zuckerberg smelled like shit the other day. You'll never hear anyone say Bill Gates' children are riddled with tuberculosis. Or how about this one? I went to Martha Stewart's house the other day, and it was a hoarder's fucking den. Smelled like diapers and bananas. You see, peace and power, legendary. Welcome to the show. What we're against are ideals and principalities that can be focused on people like a damn weapon. No one glorifies filth and degeneracy except for us. How? How do we glorify this, Brother Chris? How as a country, how as a group of people do we glorify filth and degeneracy. Let me tell y'all, premarital or non-marital sex, followed by abortions due to unwanted life being spurned during the dance of love, the dance of life, sex. Our group conscious and ideals of sexuality and morality and behavior are so skewed and so degenerate to point that if you was to point this out to most people, they would disconnect like that. They don't want to hear it. They're not going to hear it. You're not going to ruin their good fucking time. Period. We got to understand, man, we've been duped. We've been given a bill of goods that isn't good for us. Even a dog knows right from wrong on a basic level. Now, don't get them around a unguarded kitty litter box because they'll gobble up those cat turds. But I'm just saying, for the most part, a dog knows what it should and should not do. Humans don't. That's why we are indoctrinated in our schools. That's why we're indoctrinated in our centers of worship, wherever our ancestors are worshiping. We are quite literally supercomputers with blank slates and open access. Anybody can start putting in little bits of data or full programs into these minds. That's why on this show, I try to keep it so real that if you are a young person listening to it, you understand. If you read in between the lines, you understand the hidden message in every broadcast, you're going to be so far past your peers, you'll be light years. It'll be as if they're trying to rub two sticks together for knowledge, and you're sitting there with a button with an atomic bomb, just boop, ba-boom. And these fools are over here blowing the cinder. Let's continue. Poor class.
They have naturalized poverty, determining that it's something beyond human control. By this measure, poor whites were classified as a distinct breed. And I'm going to return to that theme over and over again, the importance of breeding. In other words, breeding was not just about the cultivation of social manners or skills. That's merely one definition. It was also about something more sinister, an imposed inheritance. The language of class that early Americans embraced was a composite of English attitudes toward vagrancy, as well as a transatlantic fixation on animal husbandry, demography, and pedigree. Yes, the poor were at once described as waste and inferior animal stocks in the colonial imagination. We prefer to believe all that has changed, but well into the 20th century, sterilization of the breeding poor struck many, even professionals, as a rational solution to an old problem. So let's not displace colonial history too easily. For centuries, the worst classes were regarded as extrusions of the least inhabitable land.
And this is coming to me once again from the spirit. For any poor white person who may be listening to this show, I want you to get it through your mind. When you hear guys like Alex Jones saying, I want to go back to 1776. Not only is he saying he wants us black folks out there picking cotton, but he wants you white folks being ready to be sterilized because you're not a good breeding stock. And also he wants you to be, the field boss on a horse watching us do the hard work while he's up there in the big house raping, anybody he can put his Vienna sausage in or anything. And this goes back to the moral degeneracy, or the moral degeneration. You have leaders who are sexually twisted. They're screwing everything, yeah. Everything and anything. But those are your leaders. Those are the people that you look up to, that supposed to hand you down the law. And without a moral compass, without integrity, who the hell are they to give law to anyone? Laws that they will circumnavigate. Oh, we're going to make a law about paying taxes, but we're going to put it back door to make sure that we never pay taxes. We're going to make a law about whatever, but we're going to put it back door, making sure that we don't have to go by it. That's the society you're living in. Call me a lie, call me incorrect, but you better fucking prove it. I can bring up article after article after article after article after article, paper after paper after paper after paper, showing you corruption, not only on your local level, but on your county level, your state level, your federal level. So here you are being run and governed by hypocrites who don't even adhere to the damn laws they put in place. And you still want to point the finger at the poor whites and the blacks, the Mexicans, everybody else. You guys are fucking scum. Pull your bootstraps up. But here's a fucking lady here telling you the history of this thing, how it's been put together. And this is why unity is so damn important. Because the degenerate loser leaders you are following and being governed by, they're marching you down the path to death as a species by allowing corporations to pollute your water, pollute your air, pollute your soil. They allow bankers to come in and seize property and make you homeless and destitute, forcing you to become a wage slave to one of their people that they finance to build a factory. Oh, it's all interdependent. But it first begins with you. It first begins with you believing this is the only way, the only type of society, the only type of life. Brother Bay, welcome to the show. Peace and power. Let's continue.
Scrubby, barren, swampy wasteland. And all that still relates to home ownership and the rich and poor neighborhoods of today. The poor have been with us, the white poor have been with us in various guises, as the names given across the centuries attest. And this isn't even all of the names that have been used at different historical time periods to describe poor whites. The first one, as I mentioned, is waste people, rascals. Did you know the word rascal actually comes from the meaning trash? Rubbish, off-scourings, lubbers, hillbillies, low-downers, trailer trash. What I've also discovered in writing this book is that even though, as I'm going to talk about this, we like to imagine these people as marginalized and visible, in fact, they've often been pushed front and center in America's most formative events. From Western expansion to the Civil War and Reconstruction, and FDR's New Deal and LBJ's Great Society. Now, throughout time, they've been blamed for many things. They've been blamed for living on bad land, as though they had other choices. They've been called slothful, rootless vagrants, and it's assumed that they're physically scarred, just as their surroundings were. The worst ate clay and turned yellow, wallowed in the muck, and their necks were burnt, reddened by the hot sun. Their ill-clothed, meanly fed children sentenced future generations to permanent defectiveness. Now, all these themes, I'm going to explain where they come from and how they're used in different time periods. And we may think that these themes don't exist anymore. But in fact, today's trailer trash are seen as yesterday's vagrants on wheels, an updated version of Okies and Jalopies and Florida crackers in their rude carts. Now, while America likes to think that the American Revolution enable us to break free from aristocracy and inherited class stations, the truth is different. English ideas about class and poverty never really disappeared. Think of this for a point of comparison. Jefferson's yeoman democracy fantasized a fertile country supporting hardy, independent farm families. Yet what happens when the yeoman fails? And what about those who never achieve economic independence? Now, as I said, it begins in the 1500s. It was Richard Hakluyt, the Elizabethan promoter of colonization, who first employed the term waste people to describe the expendables that could be literally dumped in the New World. In his 1584 Discourse of Western Planting, he hoped to persuade the Queen of the merits of colonization. Hakluyt called America not terra firma, but a waste firm. The American landscape, though he'd never seen it, was described as an unproductive terrain that could only be improved by turning the waste firm into one giant workhouse filled with all the idle dregs drawn from English society. Ex-soldiers, orphans, children of wandering beggars, criminals, debtors, vagrants. And if they were lucky enough to survive, these idols might be recycled and sent off to fight in English wars. Now, the group that the British and the English hated the most were vagrants. They were idle folk, analogized to weeds stifling healthy growth in a garden. They wandered the countryside, detached from the economy, much like the wasteland left fallow and untilled. So they were rounded up, some were branded, put into workhouses. Children were actually taken off the streets and sold as indentured servants to cruel masters in America. They were also notably referred to as the offscourings. And I'm going to use that term again. It's a rather unpleasant term, which refers to fecal waste. And so does the quote that I have there. Now, this notion of waste in all its various manifestations persisted. Abigail Adams dismissed the poor and landless as rubbish. So did Thomas Jefferson.
Good morning, Duchess and Christopher. Welcome to the show, both of you. Peace and power. Hopefully you're listening to the sister and you're hearing what she's saying. She described the great plantation in the sky, didn't she? And this is the foundation of the nation. Those sick, deprived, criminal-minded passed their nasty attitudes from generations. Not only did they pass down racism, they passed down the molestation, they passed down the rapes, they passed down the gold, they passed down the silver. RWP. Good morning, peace and power. Welcome to the show. The energy level just went up. This is why unity is so damn valuable for those of us who are clear-minded and of good conscience. Because if not, the hypocrites, the degenerates, the sycophants, they are all going to unite and dominate us all and march us all into oblivion. And I don't want to go to oblivion. And I hope you don't either. Let's continue.
Who proposed that a few promising, impoverished white boys might be, quote, raked from the rubbish and given an education. But his bill, drafted in 1779, failed in the Virginia legislature. The ruling elite had little desire to raise up even a few wastrels. As for the language of human stocks, it wasn't eat, pray, love, but it was eat, graze, and breed, whether on 2 or 4 legs. Political arithmetic, pre-Darwin, proposed a means to calculate human productivity. Benjamin Franklin was an early proponent who compared human patterns of migration and fertility to that of ants and pigeons. The unsettled frontier land was a lure to families, he argued, like ants to a honeypot. Overcrowding in pigeon boxes in the experiment that he did meant that the weak would have to move on. Franklin's demographic argument constituted an early form of survival of the fittest. Those who bred large families and toiled long were rewarded, while the idle would have to either keep moving or die off. And as you can guess, Franklin had no sympathy for the poor whatsoever, even though he did not come from an elite family.
So much for a fucking penny saved, penny earned, huh? Oh, Mr. fucking Franklin, another floundering founder. Floundering founder. Once we critique his life using critical thinking and actual history, we can see most of these founding fathers weren't very kind guys. They're the type of guys that if you didn't come from the correct breeding stock, the correct background, you wouldn't be welcome. Get this useless eater off my land. There'll be no vagrancy around here. And this is the foundation of this monstrosity. This is the perpetuation of the First Reich, the perpetuation of the Second Reich, the perpetuation of the Third Reich. Now we're quite literally living in the technological Fourth Reich. And we still don't see it, Brother Shannon. We're still not getting it, Brother Christopher. Sister RWP, we're not grasping it. The clone, I can't see the text. It's kind of short, but welcome to the show, friend. Peace and power. We have to be in this together, not just in the United States, not just in Europe, not just in Kemet, not just in Australia, not just in Asia or South Africa, South America, Latin America, Pacific Rim, Oceanica. We have to be in this together because it is the correct way to be. Common cause and purpose. That's all it is. Right now, the coronavirus is exploding across the country yet again, which a guest on the show, Jordan Maxwell, already articulated this was going to happen. Even though we was in the midst of the quarantine, we're like, no, we're hunkering down. We're doing blah, 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 blah. A couple of weeks after, fuck that, I'm going nuts. I got to get back to the water cooler and to my real family at the job. I can't handle being around these people I spawn. Pretty fucking sad. And with weak-ass citizenry like this, it's no wonder we haven't been attacked and destroyed sooner. All right, let's continue.
Breeding was at the heart of the domestic slave trade, and Jefferson coldly admitted that female slaves were a good investment. To his mind, free white women were breeders too. In a series of letters that he exchanged with John Adams in 1813, he argued that humans were animals guided by the overriding impulse of sexual desire. Lust, however, if it was tempered by reason among the most gifted, he argued, was producing what he called a fortuitous concourse of breeders.
Now that there, folks, was some fancy mental gymnastic to justify going down there and fucking your damn slave. That was some mental gymnastics to justify going out and, I guess, of the big house and find yourself a little tramp down there at the tavern or bar or pub or whatever the fuck. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Jefferson is just an animal. with lust and desire, don't mention a shit ton of money. And he's going to exercise thus. These are your leaders. This is the hypocrisy that I was talking about. Now, whenever you hear these fools talking about, we want to go back to 1776, what they're really saying is we want to go back to raping melanated women. We want to go back to abusing and basically raping non-melanated women and tossing them back out into the streets after you're done with them. Because the only difference between her and the melanated woman is the melanated woman is a captured slave, meaning that the plantation provides somewhat for her, whether it be a shanty, maybe a loincloth or some bullshit. And all this is to mentally justify, once again, oppression, mentally justify, once again, hypocrisy, mentally justify, and once again, the debased nature of the spirit occupying the body. I don't idolize none of these fools from the past, and I'm certainly not going to ancestor worship them and glorify them, seeing all what they did to my people. But what I am going to do is bring this out to the populace so that you all will hopefully do more research and figure it out. Yeah, now I see what's going on. These fools have it out for all of us. They'll use one group to subjugate the masses, but then once the masses are done, then that group that subjugated them, they're done too. Because you watch, after we're all exterminated, folks, there's going to be some sort of supernatural event. And that's going to justify the eradication of most of the goons and foot soldiers. And then all that's going to be left are the elites in their little, basically, city-state bunkers. How come we never learn as human beings? How come we never fucking learn? We give the same madmen the keys to the Lamborghini. They're drunk off their ass, and we're expecting them to drive down a curvy mountain pass at 120 miles per hour without incidents, without fail. And lo and behold, they get about 30 feet from the start and they crash. Every time. Let's just pray that there will not be a fifth Reich. Maybe that would be the silver lining out of all this madness, is that there will not be a fifth Reich. Because this fourth one, it's a mug. It really is a mug. But before we go, I want to share with you guys how much money you owe the federal government. All you U.S. citizens, don't go running out the door now. Don't go leaving the show now. U.S. debt clock. You're like, shit, no, I got to go. I don't want to know how much. And then you can mentally, I didn't know we owed that much money. But you ain't going to have that. Ooh, shit. $26 trillion in debt, yeah. For all the working men and women, if you guys would be so kind to get your checkbook out now at this pivotal moment. I need all working men and women, if you have it, to write a check for $211,222. And that'll cover everybody. If every one of you bastards cut the check. Cut the check for the debt. Wow. Over $200,000 we owe each. But we can't get no reparations, y'all. You see, instead of this trillions of dollars going to businesses such as Vanguard or BlackRock, huge financial institutions, by the way, one of which is actually taking over the printing of the money in this country, but that's a story for another time. That money could have been given directly to the U.S. citizen. See, the class system that old girl was talking about is still being run down. Remember when they were doing the stimulus check? Well, Bob, there's people here making more money on unemployment than they're making at their job. Well, we can't let these peasants figure that one out, Gary. Let's cut the shit off. My friends, you have funded your own enslavement. Way to go. You funded your own enslavement, and your labors and work ensured the infrastructure for the new plantation. Oh, what a glorious time to be alive, isn't it? We have China getting ready to launch a preemptive strike, no doubt, within the next few months. We have a populace that even if you was to try to make a cohesive fighting force, there's so much animosity and hate. I mean, you have white soldiers trying to kill melanated men and women in their unit. And that's just the one that we caught. What about the thousands that you haven't? What about the hate-filled young white guy right now putting together a bomb in his basement, planning to blow up somebody? What about that guy? What about the bill of goods he has been sold? Oh, you got this, you got that. And in reality, he doesn't even have a pot to piss in. But he still has enough economic viability to pull together the resources to build the bomb. That's why economic viability is so important. It's not about going and getting a fancy car or Air Jordans or whatever the fuck you think you may need materially. It's about having the resources when you have finally found a goal, whether it's constructive or destructive, you can actually implement it because you have the resources to go out and get what you need. Many of us ain't even past this having what you absolutely need to survive. Brothers and sisters right now in a world of mess and stress because they're worrying about how they're going to get the rent because they done lost their jobs due to that corona shit. We got brothers and sisters right now who have just gotten ill, who have recovered from corona, but what they're not telling you about it, they basically have the bodies of 80-year-olds. They can't work. In some cases, the female ain't even fit to breed no more. This is the reality in which we are moving fastly into. And it's only because we have allowed grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad, and even to a certain degree ourselves, we believed the lie. We contribute to the machine, the system, to enrich it, to embolden it, to reinforce it, to ensure that it can enslave the descendants of us in the future. That's where we're at. And if I'm a liar, call me out on it in the comments below. Say, True Power, you're full of fucking shit. Those were all fucking lies. For the past hour, I listened to a pack of fucking lies, guy. But I don't think I'm going to get no such comments. You know why? Because I know I'm being moved by the Spirit to say what I have to say today. As always, live your life with integrity, without hate, envy, or greed. Brothers and sisters, please, 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 let's try to be kinder to each other. Peace and power, unity and victory, dignity and respect, liberation. I'm out.